Hi, and welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. I'm your host, Kamaria Richmond, and we have a wonderful show for you today. We are talking to Dr. John Leeke, and he is a senior cyber citizen, change agent, change advocate, and change influencer. And he's here today to talk to us about the importance of voting, because 2020 it's a crucial time for us. It's, I think, one of the most critical times for us in history. And so as a senior cyber citizen, you are really active when it comes to voting. When President Obama decided to run, then Senator Obama, you started a Facebook page, and you and your daughter, Ananda Leeke, went to the White House many times. So Dr. Leeke is used to being involved. So talk to us about the importance of voting, especially now for 2020.
Well, Kamar, you hit it right on the head when you said this is a very critical time. Probably the most critical period, certainly in my lifetime. And I guess the reason it's so critical is that we have experienced a couple of elections where the voters have not turned out.
Right.
Now, we turned out well during President Obama's 2 terms, but we did not turn out well in 2016. And certainly we can attribute that to the loss by the Democrats for the presidency to the fact that a lot of people stayed home. So that's why this is so critical, this 2020 election. Now, we did show that we had learned something as a result of 2016. So in 2018, many more people got out and voted, and we were, the Democrats that is, were successful in recapturing the House, which made a real big difference. Now, it's very important that we recapture the presidency and the Senate, because there's a lot of things that have to be reclaimed that this current administration has put us in some very difficult spots. So it's critical that we get the vote out. For me, I have been pushing for some time now that every eligible person needs to make sure that they are registered. They need to know where their voting place is, because that has changed in some instances. And there have been things that have been done that try to suppress the vote, and especially the Democratic vote, and it's even more critical, people of color, blacks, African Americans, Latinos, Hispanics. They don't want that vote to count. And they have done, and now I'm talking, I'll say particularly, the Republicans don't want a great, huge turnout, because a huge turnout means that's going to favor the Democrats. Now, we've got here in Maryland, we've got the primary coming up on April the 28th. And so that's a time that we in Maryland need to make sure that we get out the vote. And we have a couple of options. We can, if we choose, to do absentee voting. And as many people now know, that's what has happened in a number of states. And it's why that sometimes we're not able to get the count until several days after, because it takes a little longer to count those absentee ballots. In addition, we may also, and this is true in Maryland, we may vote early. And I certainly recommend and urge people to vote early.
Yes.
Don't leave it to the last day, because sometimes if you leave it to that last day, oh, something comes up and you don't get to the votes, and we lose that vote. So we need people to turn out early. And I urge, as being a senior citizen, I vote early because to some extent I may not have to stand in lengthy lines. Now, if we were watching the newscast, a couple of states, particularly Texas and California, people were standing in line for up to 7.5 hours.
Right.
Now, I think that's a real credit to those individuals who were willing to stand in line for 7.5 hours. The one gentleman, he said, listen, it's my duty, it's my responsibility. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to be here and I'm going to cast my vote. Oh, kudos to that gentleman, and also to a number of young people, because I know I was watching what was happening in Austin, which is a college town, University of Texas, and I think that's one of those schools that probably has 45,000, 50,000 students, and they were wrapping all the way around the building where they were to go in to vote. Now, one thing that I'm pleased with is that some of the states are saying that if you're in line, even if it's after the polls close, if you're in line by the 7 o'clock or the 8 o'clock, you will have the opportunity to cast your vote. Now, the unfortunate thing is, if you're not really committed to voting, and you start to see that you may have to spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you give up. Well, I think this time around, the message has gotten there. You need to cast your vote.
I think so, and I think we're going to see record voting because of 2018. I mean, I do think we will see a blue wave, at least that is my hope that we do. And because we're now in the midst of the coronavirus, you just mentioned some key things for people to do. Do early voting, which I always do because it's easier and quicker. But also, if you are elderly, you're not going to stand in line for 8 hours. So do not only early voting, but mail-in votes. I mean, there has to be. What other options are there that you know of that are easier now than 2 years ago or even 6 years ago?
Yeah, those are the main ones. But we're a little bit more fortunate in Maryland. I think we have not faced the kind of voter suppression efforts that have been in other states like North Carolina, but at least at this point now, that's being fought. There are individuals who are really watching carefully to make sure that everyone is having their opportunity. The concern that has been raised even in this primaries in 2020 is that people are showing up and they are being told, your name is not on and you're not registered to vote. So one of the things that I urge people to do is, while you have time, go and check and make absolutely certain that you're on the roll and know where. They've also moved certain voting places. We get accustomed to say, oh, Well, I go to the school, or I go to the community center. Well, sometimes they change those. So be certain about where you are to vote. The other thing that I've been urging folks on my Facebook posts and other means of which that I communicate is that if you know someone, and this may be true for someone who is a senior like me, that may have a little difficulty getting to the polling place, and they do want to go. Now, that's the other interesting thing about sometimes some of us seniors. We want to go. We want to make sure. I want to go into that voting place, and I want to cast my vote in person. So sometimes we may need to reach out to them, ask them if they need any assistance to get to the voting polls. And so, offer to take some individuals, but just check on them, like children are checking on their parents now. Is everything okay? Do you need anything? Well, this is another one of those things that the children and the younger folks need to do, is check to make sure, because seniors know how critical and how important the vote is, because a lot of people did some things. They marched, they stood in lines. Sometimes they got hurt.
Right.
Trying to exercise their right to vote. So they take it seriously. I'm not so sure that some of our young people today take it as seriously. So I have a real shout out to the young people. Don't let some of your ancestors down. I mean,
Absolutely.
They will look down and see that you didn't go vote, and they won't be very happy.
Absolutely. And I definitely don't want to see what we saw in 2016. But you make a good point. You have to start preparing early. So, I mean, you know that this happens every 4 years. There's a primary every 2 years, and there's no need to wait till the last minute. Check to see where you go to vote. Check to see if you are registered. And I mean, I know we have the gerrymandering, and we have so many ways of folks trying to suppress the vote, but you do have to be an active participant, an active citizen.
Yes.
Into making change. So we know that Facebook, I don't think now, is going to double check ads. So you still have Russia that wants to get in on the action. And I mean, how is it that at this point in time, 2020, why is it still so challenging?
Well, who gets into the different offices, not just the presidency, and not just the Congress, but the governor's races, also your county councils where you have them, city councils, board of education. These are all areas in which we elect people.
Right.
And if we don't put the right people in, and then when they start to put together bills, some of those bills, and like you were saying, the gerrymandering, in terms of who and where we vote. I know I was just at one of the town hall meetings of my representative, Anthony Brown, and he was talking about how critical it was, again, for people to get out the vote, because it will it will have a bearing on what kinds of things that we are able to get, and so those things are critical. They are very important. I don't think always that people know how critical it is for an individual to exercise their right and responsibility to vote. You know, now you were saying earlier, you hope that there would be a record turnout, and we've got some indications that the turnouts are coming at record numbers. I was listening to last night some of the results as they came in, and they were comparing the turnout in terms of even 218, that the turnouts are even larger than the 218, and certainly much larger than the 2016. So that's a very positive indication that the message is getting out. I think I was concerned at one point as to whether or not there was organizing efforts, and I think I feel much better that I know that the organizing, the on the ground, you know, that a lot of people think it's so important in terms of the amount of money, because then the more money you have, the more ads and that kind of thing. But the ground game is just as critical. Getting out there, knock, 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 knocking on those doors, ring, 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 the telephone calls to individuals. And I know what a difference that makes. During both the Obama campaigns and the Hillary's campaign, along with, I've worked for Anthony Brown on at least 3 when he was running for lieutenant governor along with O'Malley, and then when he ran for governor, I knocked on doors. I made telephone calls. I take that as part of my responsibility as a citizen. And I know everybody can't do that, but I can. And so as long as I'm able to get around, I will do that. And so being on your show is another opportunity for me to voice my opinion about the criticalness of voting. And I'll put the plug in. I am a Democrat, and so I'm urging all those who are Democrats or those who find that what has happened in these past 3.5 years has been a disaster.
And I mean, things are changing. If it's another 4 years, I mean, this country is really, it's going to be something and something, someplace, somewhere we don't even know. And I had mentioned before, you know, you are a fan of this show. Mr. Brown always talked about do your homework and vote. And for voting season, he would just do one show right after the other about the importance of voting and doing your homework. And I mean, we know that you have to be supportive in the primaries. You have to, you know, because you do need to know, and I'm guilty of this when it comes to the judges. I need to do a better job at checking those folks out, because it's just not about the presidency. You know, it is, I mean, the courts now, you know, everything is so conservative. And if people don't take an active, or not active participants, then another 4 years, this country is really going to be
Yeah, we cannot, we can
No words.
absolutely not afford 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
I mean, I hope everybody understands that, and if you understand it, then you know why this getting out and voting in the primary and then voting in the general election is so critical, so important. I mean, Joe Biden has said a couple of times, we're in the fight of our lives.
Yes.
Because if we don't turn things around, the notion of our democracy, the things that the people who initially set up our Constitution, they would be very, very disturbed
Absolutely.
at what they are experiencing, what we are experiencing now. Because this man that is in the office now, he does not honor the Constitution. Okay? He has, in essence, said, I am above the law.
Absolutely.
And that's not what people fought and died for.
Yeah, that's not what the framers,
No.
that's not what was in mind. And what we have now, Donald Trump doesn't want a democracy.
Oh, no. No,
So fighting for democracy is really fighting for your life, and
That's
the
right.
vote is the only thing that we have.
That's all we have.
Right.
And that's the only thing that will stop him, because when they went through the impeachment process, and the House did their work,
They
and
did.
then it had to go to the Senate, and the Senate and McConnell and several of those others, they simply said, "Oh no, we are not going to impeach him." And then now he can sit there and say, "Oh no, I haven't been impeached," but he did get impeached by the House.
Absolutely.
And we need to be absolutely clear about that. He may not have accepted it,
But it's true.
but
It's on record.
True. It is on record.
It's not a hoax. It's
No, it
on
isn't.
record.
Yeah, and and Kamari, and the sad thing, and I don't want us to move too far away, but the sad part is we are experiencing, in fact, the World Health Organization has labeled it as a pandemic.
Right.
And he said, "Oh no, everything's going to be all right." In fact, he says, continues to say, it'll pass.
Right.
Oh no, and all of the comparisons of what we in this country are doing relative to what other countries are doing, just in terms of the fact that we've only tested 5,000 people in this entire country. And South Korea, China, other places are into the thousands of people who have been tested. And he said, we don't need it. If it were not for the governors and the mayors, we would really be in severe difficulty. But they are stepping up. They are doing what they need to do and what they took an oath to do.
And see, and you mentioned something key. It is your oath and your duty. And so if you want a government that works for everyone, that works for the people, you need people in government that are willing to do that work, because as a country, we ought to know more by now, and should have done more by now for the coronavirus. And now this is going on, I think, on the way over here, you know, at least 6 months will be into this, you know. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And, you know, it's 18 months to, 24 months for a vaccine. And so really doing your homework about people that you want to vote for is really critical. And looking at, for those that have been in office, looking at their, looking at their record, what have they been doing for 30 and 40 years?
Yes, that is so true. Yeah.
Yes. We have about 2 minutes, so give us our last words. Give us some tips on what we should do.
Let me just repeat again. Be sure to check.
Right.
Know that you're registered to vote. Know where your polling place is, and then get there. If you can't, get there early, and then help, and make sure that your family members, and if you've got young adults,
young people,
you make sure, even if you have to do what you used to do when they were toddlers, take them by the hand.
Yes.
Say, we are going to go vote as a family.
Yes.
And go to the polls. And if they live in a different part of Maryland, just make absolutely certain. And if you go vote early, then go get them on the day of the voting and take them. Say, we're going to go on a little excursion. Yeah, so that's the major thing, is making sure that we turn out the vote, and as you said earlier, turn it out in record numbers.
Yes.
Because that's the best way that we can assure ourselves that we are going to get the Republicans out of control and put the Democrats. And then once we have them, then the other thing, we've got to hold everyone accountable.
Yes.
That's not what we've done.
We haven't.
We've sometimes allowed some people to stay too long.
Yes.
If they are not doing for what we think they should be doing. So we have two responsibilities: vote and then hold them accountable.
Absolutely. Well, those are the last words. Thank you, Dr. John Leeke, for coming back to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. Mr. Brown loved you. You're such a fan of the show, and he will be posting this as well. So thank you, all senior cyber citizens. Thank you.
And thank you.